Alone moments feel uncomfortable. No noise, no distraction, no escape. Just you. Most people avoid this. They fill every silence, they seek constant connection, because being alone reveals too much. But the silent mind chooses differently. It steps into solitude, not to escape the world, but to understand itself. Because in isolation, something begins to form. Clarity, strength, control. What feels like emptiness at first becomes power over time. When you are alone, there is nothing to hide behind. No conversation to distract you. No noise to cover your thoughts. No external presence to shape your behavior. Only you remain, and in that space, your real mind begins to appear. Most people never see it clearly. They stay surrounded, constantly engaged, always connected. Not because they need it, but because they fear what silence will show them. Because when everything becomes quiet, thoughts rise, unfiltered, uncontrolled, unavoidable. The silent mind does not escape this. It allows it. It sits in that stillness without reaching for distraction. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Restlessness appears. Thoughts become louder. Emotions surface without warning. Things you ignored begin to return. This is not a problem. This is exposure. Solitude removes the mask. The version of you shaped by others fades away. What remains is what you truly think, what you truly feel. This is where clarity begins, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. And most people never see themselves clearly because they never stay still long enough. The dangerous mind chooses to look, not with judgment, but with awareness. It observes patterns, repeated thoughts, automatic reactions, hidden fears. All become visible in the absence of distraction. This awareness is powerful, because it reveals what controls you. Without solitude, these patterns remain hidden. They operate quietly in the background, shaping your actions without your permission. But in silence they come forward, and once seen, they can be changed. This is why solitude matters. It is not about being alone physically. It is about creating space where your mind can be observed, without interference, without noise. The silent mind learns to sit with itself, not for comfort, for understanding. It listens to its own thoughts, to its own reactions, and through this, it gains insight. Insight leads to control, because once you understand how your mind works, you are no longer controlled by it. You begin to direct it. Most people are driven by unconscious patterns. They react automatically. They think repetitively. They move without awareness. Solitude interrupts this. It slows everything down. It forces observation. And in that observation, you begin to see clearly what is useful, what is destructive, what needs to change. This is the beginning of mental strength, not through force, but through awareness. The dangerous mind uses solitude as a tool, not as escape. It does not isolate out of fear. It withdraws to understand, to reset, to realign. This creates depth. You are no longer reacting to everything. You are thinking before acting. You are choosing instead of following impulse. This shift is subtle, but powerful, because once you gain awareness, you gain control. And once you gain control, you gain stability. Solitude also builds tolerance, the ability to be with yourself without needing distraction. This is rare. Most people cannot sit in silence for long. For something, a screen, a conversation, a distraction, anything to avoid stillness. But the silent mind becomes comfortable here, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Over time, that discomfort fades. Silence becomes neutral, then useful, then powerful. You begin to think clearly, without interruption, without external influence. Your thoughts become structured, focused, intentional. This clarity carries into action. Decisions improve. Reactions slow down. You move with more control. because your mind is no longer chaotic. It has been observed, understood, refined. This is what solitude creates. Not loneliness, awareness, not weakness, strength, not emptiness, clarity. The silent mind does not fear being alone. It values it, because in that space it meets itself fully, and from that meeting, it becomes stronger than before. Noise surrounds you, constantly. Voices, opinions, endless information. Most of it unnecessary. Yet it fills your attention. Without noticing, your focus becomes scattered, pulled in different directions. You begin many things. You finish few. You think often, you understand little. This is the effect of distraction, not dramatic, gradual. It weakens clarity. It reduces depth. It fragments the mind. The silent mind recognizes this cost. It understands that attention is limited, and whatever consumes it shapes your thinking. Silence removes this interference. Not partially, completely. When noise disappears, your mind no longer reacts to constant input. It begins to settle. At first this feels unfamiliar. You may feel the urge to reach for something, to fill the space, because you are used to stimulation. But the silent mind resists this urge. It stays in stillness. And something begins to change. Thoughts slow down. Not because they stop, but because they are no longer interrupted. You can follow one idea from beginning to end, without distraction. This is rare. Most thinking is incomplete, interrupted halfway, replaced by something else, never fully explored. Silence restores depth. It allows you to think clearly, to examine ideas fully, to understand instead of react. This creates precision. Your thoughts become structured, less scattered, more intentional. This directly improves your actions, because clear thinking leads to clear decisions. The dangerous mind depends on this clarity. It does not operate in chaos. It requires focus, and focus is only possible when distraction is reduced. Silence becomes the environment where this focus is built. Not occasionally, consistently. You begin to protect your attention. You reduce unnecessary input. You limit what does not serve you, not out of restriction, but out of awareness, because you understand that every distraction has a cost. It takes energy, it divides focus, it delays progress. The silent mind values attention as a resource. It does not waste it. It directs it carefully. This creates efficiency. You do more with less effort, because your energy is not scattered, it is concentrated. Silence also reveals how much noise you have been carrying. Internal noise, constant thinking, unnecessary analysis, repetitive loops. Without external distraction, these become visible. At first this can feel overwhelming, but this is where control begins. Because once you notice how much unnecessary thought exists, you can begin to reduce it. The silent mind does not engage with every thought. It allows some to pass, without reaction, without continuation. This creates space between thoughts, and in that space, clarity increases. You are no longer lost in constant thinking. You are observing it. This is a higher level of awareness. It separates you from the noise of your own mind, and once separated, you gain control, because it requires restraint. The ability to not reach for constant stimulation, to not fill every moment, to stay present without distraction. This is not easy, but it is powerful, because it trains the mind to remain steady, focused, unmoved by the need for constant input. Over time, this becomes natural. You begin to prefer silence, not because you reject the world, but because you understand its value. In silence, you think better, you decide better, you act better. The dangerous mind builds its strength here, away from noise, away from distraction, in a space where attention is fully available. This creates depth. Instead of reacting quickly, you respond carefully. Instead of being pulled in many directions, you move with direction. This difference is subtle, but it defines results. Most people operate in constant distraction, their attention divided, their energy scattered, their thinking incomplete. The silent mind is different. It is focused, clear, intentional, because it has removed what weakens it. Silence is not empty. It is full of potential. It gives you space to think, to observe, to understand, and from that understanding, to act with precision. This is why silence matters, not as absence, but as advantage. Because in a world filled with noise, the one who can remain focused becomes stronger than the rest. Avoidance is subtle. It does not always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like distraction. Sometimes it looks like being busy. Sometimes it looks like moving forward without ever stopping to reflect. But beneath it, there is something unaddressed. A thought you ignore, a feeling you suppress, a truth you delay. Most people build their lives around avoiding these things. They stay occupied, they stay connected, they stay distracted. Because facing what is uncomfortable requires stillness, and stillness reveals. The silent mind does not escape this. It moves toward it. In solitude, there is nowhere to hide, no external noise to cover what is internal. What you have been avoiding begins to surface, not all at once. Gradually, a thought returns, a memory appears, a question rises. At first, there is resistance. The instinct is to push it away, to replace it with something easier. But the dangerous mind does something different. It stays. It allows the discomfort to exist without interruption. This is difficult, because what you avoid often carries weight, uncertainty, doubt, regret, but avoiding it does not remove it. It only delays it. And what is delayed does not disappear. It remains beneath the surface, influencing decisions, shaping reactions, creating tension without clarity. The silent mind understands this cost. It knows that what is not faced cannot be resolved, so it chooses to confront it, calmly, without judgment, without urgency. This changes everything. Because once you face something directly, it begins to lose its power. What felt overwhelming becomes defined. What felt unclear becomes understood. Clarity replaces avoidance, and with clarity, action becomes possible. Most people remain stuck because they never face the root. They deal only with the surface. They manage symptoms, not causes. The dangerous mind goes deeper. It asks difficult questions. Why does this thought repeat? Why does this situation create reaction? What am I avoiding? These questions are not comfortable, but they are necessary, because they reveal truth, and truth creates direction. Facing what you avoid also builds courage. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The ability to remain present with discomfort, without running, without reacting, without escaping. This is strength, because most people cannot do this. They seek relief immediately. They replace discomfort with distraction, but this prevents growth. The silent mind stays. It allows discomfort to exist long enough to understand it, and in that understanding it transforms. Fear becomes manageable, doubt becomes clear, uncertainty becomes direction. This is the process, slow, deliberate, effective. Solitude creates the environment for this process to happen, without interruption, without influence, without escape. You are left with what is real, and what is real can be changed. This is why facing what you avoid is essential, because avoidance keeps you stagnant. The same patterns, the same thoughts, the same reactions, nothing shifts. But when you confront it, something begins to move. You see clearly, you understand deeply, you act differently. This creates change, not temporary, lasting. The dangerous mind does not fear what is within. It studies it, it refines it, it improves it. Through awareness, through confrontation, through control. Over time there is less to avoid, because less remains unresolved. Your mind becomes lighter, clearer, more stable. You are no longer carrying unseen weight. You have faced it, understood it, moved through it. This is the result of solitude, not isolation, but confrontation, not discomfort, but clarity. The silent mind chooses this path, because it knows that what you avoid will always control you, until you decide to face it. Dependence is easy. It forms quietly, through habits, through comfort, through constant connection. You begin to rely on others for direction, for validation, for reassurance. Without noticing, your stability becomes external. You feel steady when others agree. You feel uncertain when they do not. This is dependence, not obvious, but powerful. The silent mind recognizes this pattern. It sees how easily control is given away, not forcefully, gradually, through reliance on external input. Isolation interrupts this, not as escape, as separation. A space where influence is reduced, where external voices become distant, and your own voice becomes clear. At first, this feels unfamiliar, because you are used to feedback, used to guidance, used to confirmation. Without it, there is uncertainty. You question yourself. You hesitate. This is the beginning of independence, because now you must decide without support. You must think without influence. You must act without approval. The dangerous mind does not avoid this. It moves through it. Slowly, carefully, but deliberately. It begins to trust its own thinking, not blindly, but through observation. You make a decision. You see the result. You adjust. This process repeats. Over time, confidence builds, not from others, but from experience. You learn that you can rely on yourself, that your judgment improves with practice. Self-defined. This is independence, not isolation from people, but independence from dependency. You are no longer controlled by external opinion. You consider it, but you are not shaped by it. The silent mind becomes self-directed. It does not wait for others to decide. It does not pause for approval. It moves forward with clarity. This creates strength, because your progress is no longer delayed by external factors. You act when needed, without hesitation, without doubt that comes from relying on others. Isolation also removes comparison. When you are constantly surrounded, you measure yourself against others, their progress, their choices, their outcomes. This creates distraction. It shifts focus away from your own path. In isolation, this noise disappears. You are no longer comparing. You are observing yourself, your growth, your direction. This creates clarity. You begin to move based on your own standard, not external expectation. The dangerous mind values this clarity. It knows that comparison creates instability. It leads to doubt, unnecessary adjustment, loss of direction. Independence removes this. You become focused, grounded, aligned with your own progress. Isolation also strengthens decision-making. Without constant input, you must think more deeply. You cannot rely on immediate answers. You must analyze, understand, choose. This builds mental sharpness. Your decisions become more precise, because they are fully yours, not borrowed, not influenced, not rushed. Mind becomes comfortable with this responsibility. It does not avoid decision-making. It embraces it, because each decision builds experience, and experience builds confidence. Over time, something changes. You no longer feel uncertain when alone. You feel clear. You feel stable. You feel in control. Because you have learned to rely on yourself. This is rare. Most people remain dependent. They need constant input, constant reassurance, constant validation. Without it, they hesitate. They stop. The dangerous mind does not. It continues, calmly, independently, with direction that comes from within. This is true strength, not loud, not visible, but deeply rooted. Because once you become independent, you cannot be easily influenced. You cannot be easily shaken. You move with certainty, not because everything is known, but because you trust yourself to navigate the unknown. Isolation builds this trust, through silence, through decision, through experience. And once it is built, you carry it everywhere. Not dependent on environment, not dependent on others, but grounded in your own ability to think, act, and move forward. This is independence, and in it you become stronger than ever before. Emotion is constant. It shifts. It rises. It fades, often without warning. Most people are carried by it. When emotion rises, they follow. Without pause, without awareness. Anger becomes action. Fear becomes avoidance. Frustration becomes reaction. This creates instability, because emotion is not steady. It changes with circumstances. If you follow it blindly, you become unpredictable, reactive, easily influenced. The silent mind does not reject emotion. It understands it. It observes it. It learns to remain still while emotion moves. This is where strength begins, not in controlling emotion instantly, but in not being controlled by it. Stillness creates this space, a space between feeling and reaction. Most people never develop this space. Emotion appears, and action follows immediately. There is no interruption, no reflection, only reaction. The dangerous mind slows this process, not outwardly, but internally. When emotion rises, it does not move immediately. It pauses. It observes. What is this feeling? Why is it present? Is action necessary? This pause changes everything, because within it, control exists. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing. This is emotional strength. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of control. Stillness allows this to develop. Without noise, without distraction, emotion becomes more visible. You notice subtle shifts, irritation before anger, tension before stress. This awareness is critical, because once you detect emotion early, you can manage it before it intensifies. Most people only notice emotion when it becomes overwhelming. At that point, control is difficult. The silent mind notices sooner, and because it notices sooner, it maintains control. This creates stability. You are not easily provoked. You are not easily shaken. You remain grounded even when emotion is present. This does not mean suppression. Emotion is not pushed away. It is acknowledged, allowed to exist, but not allowed to lead. This distinction is important. Suppression creates tension. Avoidance creates pressure. Both eventually break. The dangerous mind avoids both. It allows emotion to pass without attachment, like observing movement without becoming part of it. This reduces intensity, because emotion is not being fed, not amplified, not extended. It rises, then fades, naturally. Stillness also builds endurance, the ability to remain calm for longer periods, even under pressure, even under stress, even when circumstances are difficult. This endurance is not built through reaction, it is built through restraint, through repeated moments of choosing stillness over impulse. Over time, this becomes natural. You no longer need to force control. It becomes your default state. Emotion still appears, but it does not dominate. It informs, but it does not decide. This changes how you interact with everything. Conversations become calmer. Decisions become clearer. Because you are not overwhelmed by internal reaction. You are grounded in awareness. The silent mind becomes stable. Not because life is easy, but because internal control is consistent. This stability creates confidence, not based on outcome, but based on your ability to remain composed regardless of outcome. This is real strength. Quiet, unseen, but powerful. Most people seek control externally, trying to manage situations, people, outcomes. The dangerous mind focuses inward. It masters emotion, and through that mastery, it becomes unaffected by what it cannot control. Stillness is where this begins, in silence, in observation, in awareness. It is built slowly, moment by moment, choice by choice, until one day, you realize that what once controlled you no longer does, and in that realization, you become stronger than ever before. Most people build themselves on unstable ground, on approval, on attention, on external success. When these are present, they feel strong. When they disappear, everything collapses. Because what they built was never truly theirs, it depended on something outside, something temporary. The silent mind understands this weakness. It sees how fragile external support can be, how quickly it shifts, how easily it disappears. And because of this, it builds differently. It builds inward. Not on validation, but on discipline. Not on attention, but on awareness. Not on outcome, but on consistency. This is where true stability forms. Becoming your own foundation means you no longer rely on conditions to feel strong. You create strength internally, through repeated action, through controlled thinking, through steady behavior. This is not immediate. It is built slowly, choice by choice, day by day. The dangerous mind does not rush this process. It understands that anything lasting requires time, so it focuses on what can be controlled. Effort, focus, discipline, these become the structure, the base that everything else rests on. When this base is strong, external change does not shake you, because your stability does not come from outside. It comes from within. Most people experience instability because they are built on reaction. Their mood changes with events. Their confidence changes with outcomes. Their direction changes with opinion. This creates inconsistency. And inconsistency weakens everything. The silent mind removes this pattern. It creates internal standards. Defined. Unchanging. You decide how you act. Not based on mood, not based on situation, but based on principle. This creates reliability. You become predictable to yourself. Your actions align with your values, even when it is difficult, even when it is inconvenient. This alignment builds trust, not from others but within yourself. You begin to rely on your own discipline, your own consistency, your own ability to follow through. This is foundation, because once you trust yourself, you no longer need constant reassurance. You move forward without hesitation, without doubt that comes from instability. Solitude plays a key role here, because it removes external reinforcement. There is no one to confirm your direction, no one to validate your effort, no one to support your choices. Only you remain, and in that space, you either collapse or you build. The dangerous mind builds. It uses that isolation to strengthen itself, to prove that it can act without being seen, to prove that it can continue without recognition. This builds integrity, because your actions are no longer dependent on being observed. They are driven by internal standards. This is rare. Most people require visibility to maintain effort. Without it, they stop. The silent mind does not. It continues regardless, because it is not performing, it is building. And what it builds is not temporary. It is structural, deep, unshakable, over time. This creates independence. At the highest level, you are no longer affected by the presence or absence of others. You do not need approval to act. You do not need attention to continue. You do not need external success to feel stable. You are grounded, completely, within yourself. This changes how you move. You become calm, not because everything is perfect, but because your foundation is strong. Challenges do not break you, they test you. And because your base is solid, you remain steady. This is the final stage of strength. Not reaction, not resistance, stability. The ability to remain unchanged while everything around you shifts. The silent mind reaches this point through discipline, through awareness, through solitude, and once it is reached, nothing external can easily disturb it, because you are no longer built on what can be taken away. You are built on what you have created within. This is your foundation, and once it is strong, you do not just become independent, you become unshakable.